Buongiorno and hello. My name is Marco Mezger. Once again, I give you the update about the semiconductor market, about Q4 2025. And I also look in my IDEA glass bowl for the outlook 2026. Always a pleasure to be able with Asodel for IDEA to share my knowledge about the semiconductor market. Now, let's dive right into. As you know, I have a happy slide. The happy slide is always the opener for me on any type of presentation as a vital remember of Buongiorno, ciao, and hello. This is Marco Metzger. Today here for you as an IDEA analyst. I will share with you the semiconductor market Q4 2025 results and for the whole year 2025, plus also the outlook for 2026, using one of my glass bowls to be as precise as possible during these very volatile times. Now, let me start with my happy slide first. The happy slide is something which I have built up for myself many years ago. Since I work in, especially in the memory industry, the volatility can sometimes give you really hard feelings, and the market is coming down and then it goes up again. So it's always this up and down, but the long-term trend of the industry is always going up only north. That being said, it's very important to understand that the happy slide, which I had at least until Q3 2025, is now going to be changed going forward in 2026 because of one fundamental and very unprecedented cause last year, when in December 2nd, 2026, the WSTS, the World Semiconductor Trade Statistics, decided they have to uplift their forecast for 2026. Not just a notch, not a little bit of a correction and a minor change, a massive change. So in December 2, 2026, WSTS raised their goal for the semiconductor market, for the global semiconductor market for 2026 from 800 billion US dollar to 975 billion. And as you can see, I always told you by 2030, don't worry, the semiconductor market will be at 1 trillion. Now it looks like the 1 trillion will be already reached in 2026. That's not what I say. That's basically, in this case, what World Semiconductor Trade Statistics says, which is one of the most common used platform for the collection of data for the global semiconductor market. Even the other consulting companies, if Boston, Berger, SIA, Counterpoint, IDC, Yole, you name it, they were also predicting it probably until probably 2024 that we will reach the 1 trillion in 2030. They probably will also revise their numbers. It's not driven really by only unit shipments. The majority is really driven by higher ASPs, and I will have also some more information about this for you later during the presentation. Now, let's have a look at the actuals for 2025. Look how was the momentum in Q4 and what's the outlook in 2026. So I think for this chart, I have used various data from WSTS, from Omdia, Semiconductor Intelligence. Dr. Karl Breitenbach made a very interesting post on LinkedIn in the beginning of the year where he consolidated this. And I think if you just look on the right side when we talk about 2026 outlook, almost everything is on dark green or light green. The only thing where you see where it might be a little bit weaker is basically the demand on smartphone and PCs. But this is mainly driven because of allocation and shortage on certain key components like memory, which drive up the pricing, which probably make consumer to wait to invest the money. But overall, you can see everything is positive, and even the overall market is again double-digit growth. And if you look at the numbers for 2025, by WSTS announced, it was around about 780 billion US dollar. And with a 26% outlook growth, I think we will go even over the 1 trillion if the market continues, if the AI party continues, and there's not a sudden change of the current momentum. Now, important is now to understand where does the growth come from? So we have different categories when we are looking into the different kind of segments for the semiconductor revenue. And here you see very, very clearly the two main drivers for the growth next year, which are accounting for 88% of the growth in 2026, is memory, no surprise, and logic, also not really a surprise. So this is driven by the AI party, by the AI frenzy. So we're not talking only about HBM, we talk about DRAM, we talk about NAND. You have seen how NAND companies are going through the roof on the stock market, SanDisk, Kioxia, also Micron and others. I hope some of you were buying shares before all the hype has started, because now it's probably already too late to join the party, because it cannot go on forever. But in 2026, based on the investments, also what the big hyperscalers are pledging towards AI. I think just to give you a number, Google will spend around about 3 times the amount they have spent in 2025. They probably will spend around about 200 to 250 billion US dollar in 2026. These are numbers which are extremely unimaginable, especially a couple of years ago. But this explains you a little bit in what kind of unique situation we are today in the market. You see also micro, you see analog, you see discrete, opto, sensors. Everything is kind of positive, lifted up, but not to the extent where logic and basically memory is. And speaking of memory, I thought it's quite interesting to understand for all of us here how big of an impact, or let's say how much memory content is in each different type of application. So from high-end server to car, even in high-end server, 53% is for DRAM and NAND. If you look a little bit lower, for example, you look in a smartphone, it's roughly around about 20%. Industrial PC, around about 20 to 25%. And on cars, depending on a premium vehicle, it's less than 1% to a market average where it's maybe around about 8%. So as you can imagine, if you have a certain BOM exposure on memory on your product, then this will also have an effect on the end user price. And this potentially has also an effect on the demand. Because if you reach a certain price level, not everybody has unlimited money like the hyperscaler who can spend this. Some people will just postpone an investment. And that's a very critical factor to see what's going on in 2026 about that. Now, coming back to Europe, so going around the world, coming back to Europe, looking at the numbers from IDEA, a very positive number to see here finally is in Q4 2025, a positive book-to-bill, and a significantly more positive book-to-bill than we have seen in Q3 2025, where we had just one, which means we got the same amount of new orders as we are billing in one quarter. But this after 3 years having kind of a negative book-to-bill. Yeah, so I think this achievement in Q4 gives a very positive vibe looking forward. I just don't want to kill the party, but I have to tell you, we are also coming from a much lower base. So if you look at the billings, what we had in Q1 2023, and the billings, what we have in Q4 2025, there's a significant drop, and this story couldn't continue forever. Nevertheless, it's positive, 1.22 book-to-bill in Europe. It's a good signal for a positive start into 2026, where hopefully also the billings will increase. So these two charts from the IDEA analyst and statistics packages you can see here when we look, for example, at Italy on the left side, the billing trend. So the billing trend in Q1 last year comparing to the Q1 2024 was around about 23% less. In Q2, it was like 20% less. Q3 was 15% less. And in Q4, we minimized it to 7% less. Everything is still like all over Europe in the billings negative, like you have seen in the previous charts. So we are coming from a really, really difficult time, structural change, industrial changes, new compliances which need to be done, and a general weakness in the European market based on competition we have from overseas and also like challenges of companies in Europe. Now, when you look on the right side, we see the booking trend. And on the booking trend, this looks different because the booking trend shows already, if we go back to Italy again, already in Q1 last year, we had 16% more booking than the Q1 2024. We had in Q2 round about 26% more booking, Q3 29% more booking, and in Q4 already almost 36% more booking. This is really a very good result and also, again, keeps a positive momentum when we look into the market, when these key metrics, this key figure, new orders is basically outpacing the current revenue. So now when we are looking into the overall European market via DIMAS, so we can see here that, for example, in the different markets, like in Italy, we have like a 7%, or let me see, no, it's a 8.2%. We have in Italy a growth Q4 2025 to Q4 2024, which is above the average of the 7.7% across all the European countries, which are basically covered by DIMAS. For the product groups, you can see the biggest growth in the product group was kind of in standard logic and other logic, with 61 to and 40% plus comparing Q4 2025 to Q4 2024. But also still memory is also showing 34.5% up in the last quarter of the last year comparing to 2024. Now, as you know, I always share from my good friend Malcolm Penn and from his Future Horizon, one of the longest active analysts I know. So he has his monthly newsletter. He's also sharing very interesting data. So you see here on the right side, the figure E3. This is kind of the annualized growth rate if we're looking total IC, including memory, and total IC excluding memory. And you can see the orange line, which is basically for the excluding memory, is lagging behind because the memory is pulling all over the total semiconductor tremendously up. And you can also see on the left side, if you look at the figure E5, you can see how ASP go up like a rocket, units go down like a rocket, and the value also goes up. So this shows you less units have been shipped, but the value has been higher because ASP has been increasing significantly. So you see here, for example, December 2025, the worldwide ASP have been increased 59.4%, where basically, for example, the worldwide unit shipments has been going down 8.2%, and the revenue, because of the higher ASP, has still been going up 46.3%. Now, when we talked about the memory, what is very important to understand is the supply and demand. So I put the demand at the moment on the side because you hear that everybody is screaming on the memory side to get allocation or to get products because the big hyperscalers are sucking up a lot of the volume, speaking about HBM, speaking about DDR5, but also companies exiting DDR4, which is traditionally very much needed in the industrial and automotive market in Europe, but also speaking about NAND products, flash products, flash products which you have in mobile phones, but also, for example, in enterprise SSDs for the hyperscalers. So the bottom line here is that there is not really wafer capacity expansion on NAND flash, as you can see here on the right side. In fact, some of the big guys like Samsung and SK Hynix even reducing the wafer output by around a single digit, around about 5%, but they still manage to keep bit growth available because they have like higher density bits, which they are using, for example, for enterprise SSD. On the DRAM side, the capacity increase is also very, very minor, very low single digit. And also here we have to see, even if you hear some latest news, Micron buys a new fab in Taiwan. They buy a power chip fab, which is already kind of a skeleton and built up to move in equipment. Or you hear in the USA, they are pledging 200 billion. Yes, this will all be happening, but not in 2026. So when we are looking into 2026, it will be a very tight market for memory, and this will also affect certain end markets. So one of them, for example, is the consumer electronics. So if we are looking at global PC shipments in 2025, we have seen a growth of around about 9%. When we are looking, for example, in smartphone shipments in 2025, we have seen 2% growth. But when we are looking into 2026, these are two segments which will have bigger challenges because of price pressure and also allocation issues. So the question is, how much can the manufacturer absorb of the price increases in memory? And already now, going forward in Q2, you hear that they cannot further absorb and they need to give it to the customers, right? They need to give the price increases to the customer. And then the question is, what does the end customer do? Is he willing to pay a higher price, or is he potentially waiting that prices are coming down? Bad news, I don't think that this is going to happen in 2026. Could it be happening in 2027? Yes, sure. When new capacity is coming on, this is potential. And the big question is also what's going on the AI side. So for me, it's always very important to see how is the CapEx, how is the investment from the Magnificent Seven in order to build out the AI infrastructure. Are they slowing down? Because this could also mean that there's a slowdown in price increases and improvement on overall allocation. Now, in Europe, of course, we have several European originated car brands manufacturing. We have in France, we have in Italy, and of course, we also have in Germany. And I think what is important and interesting to see is also there the trend of the usage of semiconductor in the automotive market is also continuously increasing. So I think the latest numbers I share here with you is from TrendForce. So they are expecting by 2029 around about 100 billion global revenue for semiconductor related to automotive industry. And of course, this is covering various segments from memory, logic, MCU, analog, discretes, optosemo, semi sensors, and also others. So it's a wide range of electronic components. And no matter if it's an EV or combustion engine, you can say overall there's more electronics getting into a car in order to make it more like for entertainment, safety, and other areas. Now, last but not least, I would like to give a little bit of an overview what I see in regards for challenges but also opportunities for distributors in Europe. Yeah. So I think every challenge can be an opportunity if you find the right way for your target niche market and how to opt with it. So supply chain disruption and geopolitics, I think we are dealing with this now since a couple of years. This is creating sourcing instability. So you have seen for example, what has happened with Nexperia in Europe, but also customers getting more sensitive about COO China. So you need to find the right ways, to give customers a wide selection of alternatives or sources. Or if your customers are doing business in China, you should be able to continue to provide these type of products. So we have a very high volatility in different markets. So I just mentioned before automotive. Automotive is a little bit in a crisis mode, I would call it. But I think it's not hopeless. So we see there are also some small signs of recovery and opportunities that especially in the premium segment, the automotive industry in Europe will come back. But I think overall for the industrial market, it's very difficult for forecasting and inventory management, especially if you have a high volatility. You don't want to get stuck with inventory for your customers when the market is dropping down, because there's always the risk that you get stuck with it and you have to take the loss. But you also need to be able to find good ways if prices are going up, that customers helping you in supporting to get the products in. Then price and input cost volatility, I mean, it's pretty clear. So we see, for example, if we look at the memory market, we see prices going up like 10, 20 times in cost for certain products. And this means you need to have more working capital. You need to also work with customers together, that they understand that they also need to take some of the burden in order to allocate products at the end for them. So all these kind of areas, when you look what we are dealing with in Europe, is on the one side challenges, but also creating opportunities. For me personally, one of the biggest challenges we have in Europe is the regulatory complexity. So this is something where is a global disadvantage to other regions for us, because the new laws and what basically the EU is bringing into the different EU states is finding resources for distributors. You need to build up new teams just to be legally compliant and to be able to report all these kind of regulatories. And this is something what other regions don't do to this extent. Yeah? So I think this is giving a global disadvantage. And I hope that we are looking also in Europe that we maybe take a different look at this, and that we don't need to be everywhere like in the front run, where while the cost for this would be that we will be outpaced by our global competitors. Yeah? So I think this is really one of the biggest challenges where we probably also need to address to our local governments and also to the European Union, that they have to have some relaxation on compliances and regulatory complexity. We need to have less regulations and optimize it more for business-friendly environment. Okay, that being said, thank you very much for your time today. I'm very happy to share with you also the latest news on LinkedIn. If you have any further questions, you can always DM me. And for this, I just want to say ciao, thank you, and bye-bye from Taipei. Bye-bye.
Terrible judgment. A crucial part of leadership is who you pick to be on your team. If the Raiders decided at this year's NFL draft to use their #1 pick to select Roman Polanski, everyone involved in that decision should probably be fired. But here in the US, there's been a notable lack of consequences for several high-profile figures who've appeared in the files. Most notably, this guy is still president, but also his Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, Epstein's former next-door neighbor, by the way, has come under scrutiny because he previously said he met Epstein only once in 2005 and was so revolted he declared, "I will never be in the room with that disgusting person ever again." But new documents reveal not only were they in touch after that, Lutnick actually visited Epstein's island, something he tried to justify like this. I did have lunch with him as I was on a boat going across on a family vacation. My wife was with me, as were my 4 children and nannies. We were